When Rumpelstiltskin told the truth, the baby was never hers to begin with. The candle had long since melted to its base, but the queen refused to sleep. Her child, or what she still dared to call her child, breathed softly in the crib nearby. The room should have felt safe, but it didn't. A presence stirred in the shadows, slow and deliberate. He emerged not with laughter or mischief, but with sorrow weighing his step. Rumpelstiltskin. His eyes met hers, not with threat, but with pain. "You knew this day would come," he said softly. "You asked me to take him. You begged me." She trembled. "You're lying." He shook his head, reaching into his cloak. A silver ring. Her ring, glinted with a name she had once whispered in the dark. Before we dive deeper, remember to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment your thoughts, especially if stories with hidden truths and dark reversals fascinate you. Because what you think you know about this tale is a lie, and the real story begins long before the baby was born, long before she ever wore a crown, and long before she forgot the name that once saved her life. She was not yet queen when the kingdom fell into famine. Her father, the old king, had vanished during a hunting trip, and the royal court teetered on collapse. Crops rotted under a sky that never stopped weeping, and whispers of revolt echoed through the halls. Desperate and dismissed, the young princess wandered beyond the castle walls, deep into the forest where no one returned whole. There, beside a crooked tree scorched by lightning, she found him, a man small in stature, wrapped in shadows, humming as he turned thread between his fingers. "You came late," he murmured, not looking at her, but not too late. She didn't flinch. Her voice cracked like the bark behind her. "I need your help." Rumpelstiltskin studied her face, unreadable. He asked for no explanation. He seemed to already know. "You have nothing I want," he said at first. But when she pressed further, tears bargained threats. He tilted his head and traced a circle in the air. "I don't deal in gold or glory," he said. "But if you offer me what becomes most precious to you, I'll ensure your people survive, and you live to see a crown." The forest grew still. Not even the wind dared to answer for her. But she nodded, and the circle closed. He offered her a ring, not of gold, but of iron veined with obsidian. "Keep it," he said. "It will remind you the day everything changed." When she slipped it onto her finger, it stung like fire. Her vision blurred for a moment, and voices not her own echoed in her head. "You'll forget this pain," he whispered as she staggered, "but not the price." Then he vanished. She awoke hours later by the tree, barefoot and dazed, with mud on her dress, and no ring in sight. But from that day on, the skies cleared, the people hailed her, and her path to the throne was paved in sudden fortune. In the years that followed, no one questioned her rise. The crops thrived, the nobility bowed. The prince of a neighboring kingdom arrived and asked for her hand. They called it destiny. She called it survival. But sometimes in the mirror, she swore she saw a flicker of movement behind her reflection, and once she woke up gasping, convinced she had forgotten someone's name, a name she had once screamed into the forest. She dismissed it as nonsense, buried it under the noise of court and ceremony. But deep inside, something hollow pulsed, a quiet space waiting to be filled. Then the child came. Not just any child, the child, born during a blood moon, eyes too old for his face. And for the first time in years, she heard humming, a melody she couldn't name, but somehow remembered. She cradled the boy tighter, but the sound only grew louder. At the naming ceremony, she reached for a name that slipped through her fingers like ash. "James," she finally said, but the boy didn't blink. He simply stared past her, into the empty space beside the throne. That night, the ring returned to her finger. The palace felt colder after the child's birth, though the fires burned the same. Servants whispered about the queen's distance, how she spent hours simply watching the baby sleep, lips moving in silence, hands trembling whenever he blinked too slowly. She began keeping a journal, not to remember events, but to anchor herself to them. Yet some mornings, entire entries were gone, torn clean from the book, ink stained at the edges. She asked the maid if anyone had touched it. The girl only paled and mumbled, not since the candlelight started humming. The queen dismissed her, but that night she watched the candle on her desk, and it did hum. The baby, James, grew quickly, but his gaze never softened. He watched things no one else could see. One evening, the queen found him standing in his crib, arm outstretched, reaching for nothing. Then he smiled not at her, but to the left of her. "He's back," he whispered, though no one else was there. The queen ordered the room purified by incense and prayer. But the midwife who had helped with the birth refused to return. "That child," she muttered, "was never alone." Her words lingered long after she was gone. Desperate, the queen turned to the one person who'd never lied to her, her old nursemaid, now nearly blind. The woman ran her fingers over the queen's hands and froze when she touched the ring. "Child, this isn't yours," she said. "You wore this when you were barely more than a girl, the day you disappeared." But the queen had no memory of it. That night, she dug through her old trunks and found a single page torn from her journal, with a smear drawing of the crooked tree. Below it, scrawled in her own hand, were the words, "He will return what was never mine." Then came the dreams. Dreams of fire, of thread spun from moonlight, of a baby swaddled in smoke. In the dream, she was always giving him away, not with sorrow, but relief. She awoke sobbing, unable to remember the baby's face. Once, she woke in the nursery, holding the child, but the cradle was empty. When she blinked again, he was back. She whispered prayers to a God who didn't answer, and in her heart, a single question rooted deeper. What if the child was never meant to stay? The final blow came from her maid. One night, trembling, she confessed, "When you gave birth, milady, you passed out. We all thought you died. But someone came. A man, small, humming. He took the child and returned before sunrise. But he was different." The queen collapsed into a chair. "How do you know it wasn't a dream?" The maid's voice shook. "Because he left this." From her pocket, she pulled a single silver thread, glowing faintly, warm to the touch. The queen's breath hitched. She had seen that thread before, in her dreams, in his hands. He returned without thunder or flame, just a soft creak of the nursery door, and a hush that fell over the night as if the world itself held its breath. The queen didn't scream. She didn't call the guards. She stood slowly, hands trembling over the crib. "He's asleep," she whispered. "Don't wake him." Rumpelstiltskin nodded. "I won't. Not yet." His voice wasn't cruel. It was tired. The sound of someone who'd waited too long to say what should have been said at the start. He didn't look at the baby. He looked at her. "You remember now, don't you?" She wanted to say no. She wanted to keep the illusion intact. But the silver thread in her hand pulsed faintly with warmth, and her heart ached in a way that wasn't fear. It was recognition. "I remember pain," she said, "and fire, and giving him away." Rumpelstiltskin stepped forward. "Not giving, trusting. You begged me to take him." Her knees gave way. He caught her gently. "You knew he wouldn't be safe here. Not with the king. You asked me to hide him, and you asked me to hide the memory too." The queen stared at the crib, her thoughts unraveling like frayed thread. "But why would I forget?" He reached into his cloak and pulled out the ring. Not just any ring. The same iron-veined one from before, now inscribed with runes glowing faintly in the candlelight. Because forgetting was the price. You didn't want to live with the knowledge. You wanted to be clean, to pretend. She took the ring and for the first time saw a reflection shift, not into a queen, but into a girl who had once screamed in a burning forest for someone to save her son. Then came the name. He whispered it once, not James. Something older, woven from wind and soil and sorrow. The child stirred. The queen gasped. The name rang in her bones. It was a name she had chosen long, before crowns and castles. The name she had whispered while bleeding in the roots of the crooked tree. "He is mine," Rumpelstiltskin said quietly. "Not stolen, not bargained. Yours and mine." Her mouth opened, but no sound came, because she knew then the child had never belonged to the king, never to the court, only to the moment when she was most human. In the silence that followed, She looked down at the child, no longer just her son, but a living thread connecting two lives forever changed. "Why come now?" she asked. Rumpelstiltskin's expression darkened. "Because the king knows, and he means to use the boy for something older than power." A shadow moved across the nursery walls, like a serpent curling behind the throne. The queen turned back to Rumpelstiltskin. "Then take us both," she whispered, "before he wakes." But Rumpelstiltskin shook his head. "Not yet. You have to choose." Again. The queen stood at the edge of the nursery window, the ring burning against her skin. Below, the torches of the king's guard shimmered in formation, not as protection, but as a cage. She now remembered his threats cloaked in affection, the way he stared at the child with hunger, not love. "He's not yours," she had once said, thinking it was defiance. But now she understood it had been prophecy. Behind her, Rumpelstiltskin cradled the boy with a tenderness that no court had ever shown. "The time is short," he murmured. "He must leave tonight, or he will never be free." She took one last look at the room where she had both ruled and broken. She stepped closer and kissed the boy's forehead. He stirred, but did not cry. "Will he remember me?" she asked. Rumpelstiltskin nodded solemnly. "He already does. You are the reason he sings in his sleep." She placed her hand on his, not as queen and creature, but as mother and father, two halves of a memory restored. Outside, the bells began to toll. It was a signal. The king was coming. There would be no second chance. They fled through the corridor behind the nursery wall, a passage forgotten by the palace, but remembered by those who once served it in silence. At its end stood a door sealed with the same symbols on the ring. She pressed her palm to it, and it opened into a forest that shimmered under a purple sky. Time rippled there, slower, older. The air smelled of stories not yet told. Rumpelstiltskin stepped forward, but paused. "You can come too," he said. "You always could." But the queen shook her head. "I must face him, and this time I won't forget." The boy reached for her, but she smiled and touched his heart. "You carry my name," she whispered. "Not the one they gave you, but the one I chose before I became someone else." The forest swallowed them, and with a blink, they were gone. The bells stopped. The silence that followed wasn't fear, it was freedom. She turned back toward the throne room, alone but no longer hollow. The pain would remain, but so tambourine with the memory. And sometimes that was the only way to be whole again. Not every fairy tale ends with a happily ever after, but some end with the truth finally spoken. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel, give this video a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us bring more untold stories to life, and more revelations like this one. Become a member today to access exclusive content and help this dark archive grow. More stories are coming, and some of them were never meant to be remembered.